All right, so I think we have to get to the elephant in the room here.
What's the elephant in the room? I don't know what you're talking about.
Sitting right in front of you. It's the Yoke
The steering wheel?
wheel.
Yeah.
I think we should probably start talking about it now because it's going to take 90% of this episode. So let's go. What? I don't even. Did you just accidentally press a button just trying to touch it?
I hit the brakes so I can move it. No, this is the yoke. This is the steering wheel. Okay. I have some mixed thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked Tesla's last wheel, actually. And the reason I like the last wheel is because all of the controls were uniquely functional, like single-use functional. There was wheel on each side, and then there were buttons above and below each wheel. And I would always use left button for media volume, press it in to play pause. Right wheel was fan speed, press it in to go auto or off, and then media controls up and down. The yoke is wide. It doesn't have a top, of course, but it's got these little nubs, so you can experiment with different driving positions.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very rectangular, and that part doesn't bother me at all. The fact that it's a yoke doesn't bother me at all. It is not actually the yoke that bothers me. I've gotten used to it at this point, but there are no stalks. As you can tell, there's no drive stalks and there's no blinkers. And the buttons on the steering wheel are all touch sensitive.
Yeah.
They're not physically clicking in buttons. They are haptic buttons, but they're like pressing a piece of glass that vibrates back at you. All the buttons. Blinkers, headlights, horn, windshield wipers, all of it. And that part sucks. Because now that I'm doing this new hand over hand motion because I can't just pass it through like a wheel normally would, I am constantly, at least in the first couple days, brushing buttons, brushing the blinkers, brushing the headlights. And it's so frustrating to have missing the blinker and then turn and hit the blinker you didn't want to hit.
It's the hardest thing to hit and the easiest thing to hit at the same time. It knows when
it's a very odd
to do
choice.
The opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm getting my muscle memory down of the location of the buttons. So on the left side, it's the blinkers and the headlights. The blinkers are obviously easy to reach because I am over here with one hand. I'll hit the blinkers. It's a light press to hold, and then you hear the vibration. Another vibration for a heavy press, which is I guess it's sort of a force sensitive, and that'll leave the blinker on. You can press it again to turn off. Headlights, same thing. You can do a headlight flash just by tapping, or you can heavy press to turn them on and get your settings. And then on the other side, it's just a horn. Just tap the horn. It's kind of normal, which, I don't know. That doesn't seem better than a horn in the middle.
Yeah, I don't really
and
get that.
Then you have your wipers and your mic for voice activation. But yeah, it's really, I think the combination of touch-sensitive buttons and the yoke are what goes so wrong. I think if it was one or the other, I would be less mad. I think if it was a regular wheel with touch-sensitive buttons, that would be fine. I could remap my muscle memory, but I'd still be passing the wheel through my hands and I wouldn't brush them accidentally. I think if it was a yoke with regular buttons and stalks, that's actually what I would prefer. That would have also been fine because I can get used to the yoke, and I've actually, in a couple days, gotten my steering down. I do full 360 turns every day out of my driveway, and it's fine now. But I get so mad when I accidentally hit one of these buttons. So that's how I feel about the yoke.
Yeah, I could see a good middle ground here being just a slight indentation with still touch buttons, so you can kind of feel where everything is a little easier. Because I've seen you if your thumb kind of comes right off the steering wheel and then hits the edge of where the touch sensitive spot starts, that's not actually hitting the blinker. Yeah. So if you could feel that little dent going down, and they do have a little indent in the middle to differentiate, left and right, but that only helps in up and down. You can still miss it left to right on these buttons.
You can miss all around the button.
Pretty hard.
And I think the first couple days, during that Boston road trip, I would be going to merge and I would look over my shoulder. Normally you just hit the stalk and you're gone and you have to check your shoulder and then merge. I would always have to check to make sure I hit the right blinker and to make sure I hit the actual blinker.
Yeah.
And the haptic feedback is nice if you're kind of in the area and you know when you hit it, but it's just a lot of times I would check and I would signal and I'd realize I hit the wrong button because I wasn't looking. So I'd always check and then look at the wheel again just to make sure I got it.
Yeah.
And that like mapping process for me, you know, I have 10 years and 100,000 miles of driving with stocks that I have to unwind or like relearn.
Yeah.
There's people, you know, who get maybe the long range one later that might have 40 years and 500,000 miles of driving with stocks. And how long is it going to take them to flip, to like learn this and get as proficient as they used to be with what they just were used to forever? I don't know. I think it's going to take me, like, if I was guessing, 3 weeks.
All right. So before we head to break here now, I just want to leave it off with one last question. Even with you saying in 3 weeks you think you'll be pretty much fully acclimated to this, if you had the choice, even at the end of that 3 weeks, wheel or yoke?
At the end of the 3 weeks?
I mean, just like, you know, you're going to have it in the car forever. So you understand that a yoke, like in 3 weeks, you think you'll be totally ready for it. But if you had the choice right now to have a wheel in this car, would you take it?
I would take, right now? Right now,
yeah, but right now, knowing you're gonna have this car for longer than 3 weeks, so yeah,
I have a unique answer to that. I would take a hybrid. I don't know if that's cheating.
Not a choice. I want to go yoke now or old wheel.
Old wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, but if I could hybrid, I would pick the yoke with real buttons.
I think a lot of people would agree with you there. I think the yoke is weird. I would prefer wheel, but maybe just because I've been using it for so long. But
I think most reasonable people would pick a wheel until they get used to the yoke.
I guess. But I do think, like you said, it's a difference with the buttons, I think, are what a lot of people mostly seem to have an issue with or are worried about. And I think that's a legitimate concern that, you know, I'm sure people will get used to it. But at the same time, you said that Elon's excuse probably for the yoke is that eventually we're not going to need steering wheels at all. But that just feels like that makes zero sense, because why would you make the product different when you're going to get rid of it?
That is fundamentally an excuse instead of a reason. You don't make a feature worse as it starts to rain. Yeah. You don't make a feature worse because you won't need it later. Like, that's like saying, oh, we didn't add wireless charging to our we added worse wireless charging to our phone because we won't need it in the future. No, you just make it as good as possible until you don't need it anymore. Yeah. And this has always been, maybe we'll talk about this later. Probably we'll make a whole video about this eventually, but my number one, like, fundamental conflict when talking about Teslas is, number one, their best feature, I think, is how fun they are to drive. Mm-hmm. And number two, their number one biggest, like, tech advantage that they talk about a lot anyway, is how you won't have to drive them. Mm-hmm. And the yoke to me is like right in the middle of that crossroads of like, okay, this is the most fun car to drive I've ever driven, and probably for a lot of people will be the most fun car to drive. So I don't really want to do too much autopilot. Why would you make the steering wheel worse? Because later you won't have to drive it, but I want to drive it. You know what I mean? Like, that conflict between those two guiding principles of Tesla and why they're so successful is fascinating to me. Thanks for watching this Waveform clip. If you want to subscribe to the Waveform Clips channel, which is what you're on right now, definitely do that below. Also, definitely make sure you watch the full episode. We always link that below on the main podcast channel. Also, listen anywhere. If you want to listen to some audio-only version, you can definitely do that.
You can. And
subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subliminal messaging. It's working, right? You hit the like button too, right? You hit it. Okay, cool. See you later.